I'm Phil's friend, Bob Butler, and just want to say a few words for Phil. And several years ago, I was taking the dog out for a walk in the road, and this old red van came driving down the road, and it stopped beside me, and the guy rolled down the window, and he asked me, "Do you live here? Right in this house?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, my name's Phil, and I just bought the house next door, so we're going to be neighbors." I said, "Oh, that's really great." And one of the first things he said was, "If you ever need any help," he says, "I can do all kinds of things, like carpentry and all that stuff like that." And I said, "Oh, that's really great." So we got together from time to time, and whenever I would bring up my chainsaw or the log splitter, as soon as things like that would start up, here comes Phil walking across the lawn and saying, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to cut down some trees and split up some wood." And there was this really huge ash tree. This was the time when all the ash trees were dying. And I don't know how to get this thing down. He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I will help you and tell you how to do it." So he had this 100-foot cable, and he climbed partway up the tree and attached the cable, and he started making some cuts in the tree. And I hooked my truck onto this cable, and I was measuring the distance from the tree to my truck. And I said, "Phil, do you think this is going to work?" He says, "Yeah, don't worry about it, just go ahead and do it." So he had the cut made. So I put the truck onto it and just got the cable taut. And he said, "Okay, go ahead now." So I went ahead and I heard the big crack and then tremendous thump, and the truck stopped. And he was right. The tree came down this far from the bumper of my truck. So Phil really knew what he was doing with that. He was such a great guy with all the help and everything like that. And he was so proud about some of the things he was doing when he was hunting, because he got about 4 or 5 deer from my land. And he built this hut back there. And I still haven't seen it yet. I couldn't bring myself to go back and see it. And he would stay in this hut and surprise the deer when they came by. I have yet to see this hut, but I will go back there and see it eventually. I've never really cared much for football, but after I met Phil, one of the things he asked, "Why don't you come out over to football?" I said, "Okay." I came over, and a couple of his other friends were there. Mike was there, and we watched football a few times together. And actually, I caught the bug for football, and we spent a lot of time watching football, and Phil making chicken wings, and having pizza, and that sort of thing. And then he also got me into fishing. And he asked me, just come on out with me on the boat. And we did a few times. And it's something where we had a lot of time on the long drive to Barcelona a few times to talk. And Bill really was getting things, telling me a lot about himself and all that. And I really appreciated that. He would talk to me about everything. But he was a great friend, and I really gonna miss him with everything that he used to do, and just for the kind of friend that he was. The last time I saw him, he came over to my house. It was only a few days before what has happened. And he had bought a trailer from me just 2 or 3 weeks before that, an old utility trailer. And at the time, he didn't have quite enough money in his pocket to pay for the whole thing. I said, "Well, sorry, don't worry about it." So later on, he gave me the $30 that he owed on it. And one of the last things he did, probably a day or two before he came over to my house to see me, he asked me, did I pay you the $30? I said, oh yeah, you've already paid me that. And Phil was a guy, like Pastor said, he would give you the shirt off his back. And I know this for a fact. So I'm wearing one. So, I love Phil.
I'm Rose, Bob's wife, next door neighbor, granddaughter. Let's see over here. She's there. She doesn't quite want to come up, but I followed your lead and wrote things down because I'm a nurse and I learned a lot of things in that time, but things like this, it's personal in different ways. A life is not an event, it's a story. And this story isn't over. But there are so many things that describe what Bob said. It feels worth the time to sit and write it out. You write a good story and you don't ever forget it. And Phil was unforgettable. And we all arrive here today as the sum total of what we've lived, experienced, and learned. This is my capsule summary of the Phil and what he lived and learned when he became our neighbor and then friend and family. I was the sum total of my living and learning as well. Habitually wary and more mistrustful than most people know. Enter Phil. How? I heard the roar of a chainsaw like it was on my lawn, and it was. There was Phil, suited up like Chevy Chase, a Christmas vacation, cutting up a fallen tree languishing on our side lawn, as Bob had just had a partial knee replacement. Of course, Phil didn't know this. He saw a need and just did. He then came to the door and knocked and said he'd help stack it up when the ground froze. Crystal looked at him, still holding the saw, like an apparition from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I told him her name, but he saw the face. And that was the start of Phil's Win Crystal Over campaign. The following month, we were accosted by the 2022 Christmas blizzard. I waded across the road to take light bulbs to the neighbors, and then carefully over to Phil's place because we saw that he lived alone, cautiously left a plate of Christmas goodies. Before an hour had passed, the message came through, "Thanks so much. That really hit the spot." Just gratitude is so rare. Winter came and went. Spring arrived, and I started going to monthly food pickups that Phil told our fixed income selves about. Of course, there Phil was, not taking but giving out food, helping carry, and asking how everyone else was. Summer came, and with it, side lawn soccer matches with Crystal on the side lawn, and away the ball would go over to Phil's lawn. I'd tell her, "I don't think Phil's playing. Should I knock and ask him to kick it back?" She would laugh and, of course, do it again. Phil caught on, of course, with a smile, a wave, and a knowing wink. We experienced the same this past November when Crystal took what may have been an unauthorized jaunt into our woods to get some space in tense moments. Days later, there was a message from Phil about the discovery of a sparkly hairband back there that he wanted to return, but not before saying how good it looked with his eyes. There were more food drives, and Phil always shared lots of fruits and vegetables with us. I said, "Phil, aren't you eating your fruits and vegetables?" "No, I don't eat them." Summer melted into fall, and property line chats between Bob and Phil and occasionally myself became a thing, with Crystal watching from a safe distance. Next, the truck would roll up for a hello, and then the invites for all of us to come on over for the Bills games, for better or for worse for the Bills. Bob began to go over regularly, and what began was a new day of adopted father and bonus son in God's most gracious way. Nothing beat the day the carpentry van Phil had rolled up and he announced, "I've got pizza. Crystal, climb in and get some," and she did. Thus saw the first thaw of Crystal and spring on that front arrived. Midwinter, as Phil sat in our living room watching football, Crystal came out, creeping so cautiously, and presented him with a keychain she'd made bearing his name. Looking at Phil, you'd have thought he won Fort Knox in the heart of a child, and he became Uncle Philly Cheesesteak. As the next 2 years unfolded, Phil joined us at church, helping cut trees, gave venison and groceries for our son. We shared and traded rides to and from the mechanic when our vehicles gave out at the worst of times. The best of those was the day we were halfway back and I heard, "Oh no," from the passenger seat. I said, "What's the matter, Phil?" "I forgot my phone. We gotta go back." "Nah, never mind, it's my fault." I says, "But Phil, how are you gonna know when the van's done?" "Okay, let's go back." Then fishing trips for Bob and Phil. Bob has struggled health-wise, and Phil saw the need for relief. Friend and family ship cloth began to take shape out of the ebb and flow of the everyday. Funniest of all was the desperate call when Bob and Phil were headed to Barcelona to go fishing. "Phil thinks he left his door open. Can you go check?" Sure enough, it was wide open, the door welcoming flies and anyone else that might have wandered by. But that door, in retrospect, represented Phil's heart, open and giving and unselfish as one could be. And then it brings to mind, who came through that door? Our family, his widowed mom, widowed friend, anyone who needed someone. At the same time, Phil didn't resent what someone else could do that he couldn't. I'll never forget the setting up of Amazon Prime. There Phil sat with his readers at the end of his nose, and he humbly announced, "I've got a new phone and a new TV, and me and Bob couldn't do it, but he said you could." Much remote and phone juggling later, the job was done, followed by a sheepish message about a month later that I was going to kill him because he needed help canceling it. Overall, Phil was truly Christ-like in that he always gave more than he took, always and with pleasure. I knew he'd really arrived in Crystal's book when, between appointments and Tuesday dance class, she'd spot his truck in the hardware store parking lot and insist that we had to stop by and see Philly Cheesesteak, and no, we wouldn't be late for dance. Great was the day when she asked him how he knew how much change to make, and he brought her back behind the counter and showed her how to operate the cash register. He was as generous with his time and his knowledge as with anything else. And I distinctly remember in the beginning of this past fall, saw him back by his barn and he hollered something over. I couldn't hear him. I walked, "What you need, Phil?" And he just got in a deer that morning, and there the hapless creature was, hanging by the legs with its head over the bucket. And he asked, "Did our son need some venison?" And I said, "Sure, Eric loves venison." "Thanks, Phil." I mean, he always looked out for Eric from a distance. And then I got a PhD dissertation on how a deer is processed. And I said, "That's a lot of information, Phil." I said, "But I don't think your subject over there is appreciating it as much as you are." And I just, "No, I guess not." When he gave knowledge, he did so with humility and gratitude. He didn't bat an eye at Thanksgiving dinner when, due to logistics, he had to be seated next to the turtle tank. Of course, he peered in and said hello. And only Phil would ask if he could please just have just a little more of that stuffing. It's so good. This is the guy who brought 3 pies when I said I only needed 1. In her profound sorrow and grief, Crystal said, "Remember how he gave us discounts we didn't deserve? He was so good to us." From where he is now, I know Phil would want me to ask each one of you, whom he loves and respects, have you accepted the 100% discount Jesus gave you on the cross? The one we don't deserve and could never earn. If not, accept him as Lord of your life today, so that we would see each other again. In closing, Phil, thank you for who you are to myself, to Bob, and to Crystal. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Till we see you again, Philly Cheesesteak.
We would go to Walmart and I would make him wear his flip-flops. I guess that my mom was talking about Tarzan. He would watch that movie with us, and I'm gonna play "It'll Be in My Heart" from that movie. So, my grandpa never got to hear me play my guitar, which sucks because music is what I love most out of everything. And I wish I would have shared that with him. I think he's listening though, so.
Amen.
Come, stop your crying, it'll be alright. Just take my hand, hold it tight. I'll protect you from all around you. I'll be here, don't you cry. For one so small, you seem so strong. Arms will hold you, keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken. I'll be here, don't you cry. You'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. You'll be in my heart. No matter what they say, you'll be here in my heart, always. Why can't they understand the way we feel? They just don't trust what they can't explain. I know we're different, but deep inside us, we're not that different at all. And you'll be in my heart. Oh my God, I didn't write the chord right. Pretend I'm doing this correctly. From this day on, now and forever. Don't listen to them. What do they know? We need each other to have and to hold. They'll see in time. I know you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. You'll be in my heart. No matter what they say, you'll be in my heart, always. Phillip Phil Collins wrote that song for his daughter when she was just a baby.